What is the true measure of a person's worth? Is it the balance in their bank account, the brand of their suit, the height of the skyscraper that bears their name? Or is it something quieter? Something hidden in the shadows, something you could walk past 1,000 times and never notice. We are taught to look for value in the things that shine, in the loud declarations of success. But what if the greatest treasures are the ones that don't glitter? What if they are found in the gentle hands that soothe the crying child, or the quiet courage of a heart that refuses to break, even when it is bent under the weight of the world? This is a story about that kind of value. It is the story of a woman who was invisible to the world, and the powerful man who was finally forced to see. It begins, as so many stories do, in a place of stark contrasts, a world of glittering chandeliers and worn-out shoes. Elara moved through the opulent dining room of the sovereign like a ghost. Her uniform, a crisp black dress and apron, was a shroud of professional invisibility. She refilled water glasses, cleared away plates bearing the remnants of $1,000 meals, and offered polite, rehearsed smiles that never quite reached her tired eyes. To the patrons, she was a function, not a person. A pair of hands. A silent presence that ensured their comfort. None of them saw the calculus clicking away behind her serene expression, the rent that was 3 days late, the final notice from the power company tucked into her worn purse, the ever-present, crushing weight of her mother's medical bills, a debt left behind like a ghost after a battle with an illness that had taken everything and still lost. Her world was a tiny, cramped apartment with a flickering bulb in the hallway and the scent of her mother's old perfume still lingering on a scarf she couldn't bear to throw away. This restaurant, with its plush velvet chairs, panoramic city views, and the low hum of moneyed conversation, was another planet entirely. She was merely an astronaut on a short, grueling mission, counting down the minutes until she could return to her own small, lonely atmosphere. Her gift, if you could call it that, was a profound and silent empathy. It was a trait born from years of caring for her ailing mother, of learning to read the language of a pained sigh, a subtle flinch, the flicker of fear in eyes that could no longer speak. She saw the things others missed. She noticed the nervous tick of the businessman in corner booth 6, terrified of the deal he was about to make. She saw the quiet heartbreak in the eyes of the woman at table 3, celebrating an anniversary alone. She was a keeper of secrets she never asked for, a silent witness to the subtle tragedies and triumphs that played out beneath the surface of this glittering world. And tonight she was about to witness a drama that would change everything. Into this cathedral of wealth walked Tariq Al-Jamil. He was not just a patron, he was a legend. The ice king of international finance, a man whose name was a headline, whose decisions could shift global markets. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a suit that cost more than Elara's annual income, and he carried with him an aura of untouchable power and profound loneliness. By his side, clutching his hand, was his son, a small boy of about 5 named Omar. The boy was a miniature version of his father, with the same dark, intelligent eyes, but his were red-rimmed and brimming with a sorrow too large for his small frame. The moment they were seated at the best table in the house, the one with the most breathtaking view of the city lights, the fragile peace of the restaurant shattered. Omar began to cry. It was not the petulant whine of a spoiled child. It was a raw, guttural sob of pure, undiluted grief. It ripped through the polite murmurs and clinking glasses, turning every head in the room. Tariq's face, usually a mask of cool control, tightened. He leaned in, murmuring to his son in a low, urgent Arabic. He offered him a tablet, a small, expensive-looking toy car from his pocket. He tried to reason, to command, to soothe. But the boy's grief was a storm that could not be contained. He pushed the tablet away, sending it clattering to the floor. He swiped at the toy car, his small fist clenched. The sobs escalated into wails, echoing off the high ceilings. The entire restaurant was now an audience to Tariq Al-Jamil's powerlessness. He, a man who controlled billions, could not control the sorrow of his own child. Elara watched from her station near the kitchen. Her manager, a perpetually stressed man named Mr. Davies, hissed at her. "Don't stare. Get back to clearing table 9". But Elara couldn't look away. The other waiters saw an embarrassing spectacle. The patrons saw a disruption. Mr. Davies saw a threat to the restaurant's reputation. Elara saw a little boy drowning in a sea of pain, and a father who was standing on the shore, forgetting that he, too, was drowning. She recognized the shape of that grief. It was the same hollow, all-consuming ache she had felt when she had lost her mother. It was a pain that no toy, no distraction, no logic could touch. As Omar's cries reached a fever pitch, Mr. Davies muttered in frustration, "For heaven's sake, what is wrong with that child?" And under her breath, so quiet it was almost a thought, Elara whispered the truth she saw so clearly. "He's not a spoiled child. He's a heartbroken one. He just needs a mom." Mr. Davies shot her a sharp look, but she wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on the small, trembling boy. Something inside her, a deep, instinctual pull she couldn't explain or ignore, urged her forward. It was against every rule. It was a direct defiance of her manager's orders. It was professional suicide. But she started walking. Each step toward the table was a thunderclap in the silent, judgmental restaurant. She felt hundreds of eyes on her back. She saw the flash of annoyance in Tariq Al-Jamil's eyes as she approached, a look that had made executives tremble. She ignored it. She didn't look at the powerful father. She knelt, bringing herself down to the child's level, entering his world of chaos and tears. She didn't speak. She simply held out her hand, palm up. And it was a simple white linen napkin she had been folding. With a few deft, practiced movements, a skill taught to her by her own mother on long, difficult nights, she folded it into the shape of a small, delicate bird. She offered it to Omar, her eyes soft with a compassion that asked for nothing in return. The boy's wails hitched. His tear-filled eyes, wide and dark, focused on the small white bird in her hand. He looked from the bird to her face, seeing not a stranger, but a stillness, a quiet harbor in his storm. Slowly, hesitantly, his small, trembling hand reached out and took the napkin bird. He clutched it to his chest. The sobbing subsided, replaced by shuddering breaths. A fragile, miraculous silence fell over the table, and then the entire restaurant. Tariq Al-Jamil stared, utterly stunned. He had summoned the world's best child psychologists, offered the most expensive toys, tried every method his vast resources could procure. Nothing had worked. And now, a waitress with a folded napkin had accomplished the impossible. He looked at Elara, truly looked at her for the first time. He saw the worn-out soles of her sensible black shoes, the faint fraying at the cuff of her uniform. And he saw the profound, unshakable calm in her eyes. It was a calmness he hadn't felt in himself, or seen in his son, in over a year. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low rumble of disbelief. Elara simply nodded, gave the boy one last, small smile, and stood up. She turned and walked back to her station, her heart pounding, her cheeks flushed, expecting Mr. Davies's wrath. She had broken the cardinal rule, she had become visible. The rest of the dinner was a quiet affair. Omar sat silently, clutching the napkin bird, occasionally glancing toward where Elara was working. Tariq barely touched his food, his gaze repeatedly drifting to the unassuming waitress who was now diligently clearing another table, once again blending into the background. When he and Omar left, the head waiter brought a small, heavy envelope to Elara. "From Mr. Al-Jamil?" Table 7-inch. Elara opened it in the cramped staff locker room. Inside was a tip that amounted to more than 2 months of her salary. And tucked beneath the crisp bills was a stark, black business card. It read simply, Tariq Al-Jamil, CEO, Al-Jamil Holdings on the back, written in a firm, decisive hand, were 2 words, "Call me." For 2 days, the card sat on Elara's small kitchen table, a stark black rectangle in her world of beige and gray. It felt like a portal to another universe, a universe she was terrified to enter. The money was a godsend. It paid her rent, cleared her utility bill, and made a small dent in the mountain of medical debt. It was a temporary reprieve, a gasp of air before the next wave hit. The card, however, was something else entirely. It was a question. An unknown. Her practical side, the part of her that had survived so much, told her to throw it away. He was a billionaire. She was a waitress. The incident at the restaurant was a fluke, a strange, momentary collision of worlds that were never meant to intersect. What could he possibly want from her? To thank her again? To offer her more money out of pity? The thought made her skin crawl. But then she would remember the look in Omar's eyes. The raw, bottomless grief. She remembered the feeling of his small hand taking the napkin bird, the fragile trust in that simple gesture. It wasn't about the powerful father, it was about the lost child. That connection felt real, untainted by the worlds of wealth and status that separated them. On the third day, with the final notice from the hospital's collections agency clutched in her hand, she made the call. A crisp, professional voice answered. Mr. Al-Jamil's office. Ilara's voice was barely a whisper. My name is Ilara. He asked me to call. There was a pause, and then the voice returned, imbued with a new, deferential warmth. Of course, Ms. Ilara. Mr. Al-Jamil is expecting you. He has sent a car. It will be at your address in 1 hour. An hour later, a sleek black car, the kind she had only ever seen in movies, purred to a stop outside her rundown apartment building. The driver, a man in a smart suit, held the door for her as her neighbors stared, their faces a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The drive through the city was a journey through a looking glass. They left her world of cracked pavements and graffiti-scarred walls and entered a realm of polished glass, steel, and ambition. The headquarters of Al-Jamil Holdings was a skyscraper that didn't just touch the clouds, it seemed to command them. In the silent, high-speed elevator that whisked her to the top floor, Ilara felt her own reflection staring back at her from the polished marble walls, a pale, nervous woman in her best, but still faded, dress. She clutched her purse like a shield. Tariq Al-Jamil's office was larger than her entire apartment. One wall was a solid sheet of glass, offering a godlike view of the city she had only ever known from the ground. He wasn't sitting behind his massive mahogany desk. He was standing by the window, looking out, his back to her. When he turned, his face was unreadable, the same mask of cool control she had seen in the restaurant. Ms. Ilara. Thank you for coming. His voice was formal, distant. Please sit. He gestured to a leather chair that probably cost more than her couch. Ilara sat on the edge of it, her back ramrod straight. I won't waste your time. He began, pacing slowly. What you did at the restaurant, with my son Omar, it was remarkable. Since his mother passed away a year ago, he has been inconsolable. We have the best therapists, the best doctors. No one has been able to reach him. He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. His eyes, so cold a moment ago, held a flicker of raw desperation. I don't know what you did, or how you did it. But I need it. My son needs it. He walked to his desk and picked up a folder. He slid it across the polished surface toward her. I am prepared to offer you a position as Omar's full-time companion. The salary is detailed in this contract. It will be enough to solve any financial difficulties you may have, now and for the foreseeable future. You will live in my home. Your only responsibility will be Omar. Ilara stared at the folder, then back at him. It was a business transaction. He was trying to buy her gift, to package her empathy and put it on his payroll. The old, familiar sting of being seen as a function, a service to be purchased, returned. But then she looked past the billionaire CEO and saw the father. She saw the dark circles under his eyes, the subtle tremor in the hand he rested on his desk. He wasn't trying to buy a commodity. He was trying to buy his son's happiness. He was trying to buy peace. Mr. Al-Jamil, she said, her voice quiet but firm, surprising them both. My name is Ilara. And I don't want your money. Tariq's eyebrows shot up. It was clear this was not a response he had anticipated. I beg your pardon? The money. I appreciate the thought, but that's not why I would do this. She continued, finding a strange new courage. I saw a little boy who is hurting. If I can help him, I will. But not as an employee performing a service. I will do it as a friend. To him, she pushed the folder back across the desk. I will accept a reasonable salary to cover my living expenses and other obligations. But I will not be bought. My terms are that I am there for Omar. My focus is his well-being, not a contract. A long silence filled the vast office. Tariq stared at her, his expression shifting from surprise to something else: assessment, respect. He had expected gratitude, perhaps some haggling. He had not expected principles. He had not expected integrity. This quiet, unassuming waitress was negotiating with him, not over money, but over dignity. He slowly sat down in his chair, leaning forward. What are your other obligations? He asked, his tone softening, becoming less of a CEO and more of a man. Alara hesitated, the shame of her debt washing over her. My mother, she was ill for a long time. There are bills. She didn't need to say more. He understood. He nodded slowly. Those will be taken care of. Consider it a signing bonus, not a salary. Separate from our arrangement. He looked at her, a hint of a smile touching his lips for the first time. So, Alara, do we have an agreement? On your terms? She met his gaze and, for the first time, she wasn't intimidated. Yes, Mr. Al-Jamil. We do, Tariq. He corrected her gently. My name is Tariq. The penthouse was less a home and more a museum of a life that had once been. It was beautiful, sterile, and silent. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a sprawling, indifferent city. Modern art adorned the walls, and minimalist furniture was arranged with geometric precision. But there was no warmth, no life. The air was thick with unspoken grief. Alara's arrival was a quiet disruption. She came with one suitcase containing her meager wardrobe and a small box of personal treasures, a worn copy of her favorite book, her mother's old woolen scarf, and a framed, faded photograph of her parents on their wedding day. She placed the photograph on the nightstand in her new room, a guest suite that was larger and more luxurious than any place she had ever lived, and it instantly became the warmest spot in the entire penthouse. Her first few days were a delicate dance of observation. She didn't force herself into Omar's world. She simply existed within it. While he sat listlessly in his state-of-the-art playroom, surrounded by every toy imaginable, she would sit quietly in a corner, reading her book. When he refused to eat the gourmet meals prepared by the private chef, she would make herself a simple piece of toast in the vast, gleaming kitchen and eat it at the counter. She didn't pressure him. She didn't cajole. She simply created a space of quiet, steady presence. And slowly, Omar began to notice. He would peek at her from behind a sofa, his dark eyes curious. He started moving his toys a little closer to where she was sitting. One afternoon, he approached her while she was humming a soft lullaby, one her mother used to sing to her. He didn't speak. He just stood before her, holding a small blue block. Alara stopped humming and smiled. That's a beautiful color. Omar remained silent, but he placed the block on the table beside her, then went back to his toys. It was a tiny offering. An opening. From there, the progress was slow but steady. She discovered he loved stories, not from a tablet, but from a book, where he could point at the pictures and feel the paper. She learned he was fascinated by the rain, so they would stand by the huge windows on stormy days, watching the droplets race down the glass. She didn't try to replace his mother. Instead, she made it safe for him to remember her. One day, she found him staring at a photograph on Tariq's desk of a beautiful woman with a radiant smile. She was pretty, Alara said softly, coming to stand beside him. Omar nodded, his lip trembling. Mama, he whispered, the first word he had voluntarily spoken to her. She loved you very much, Alara said, her heart aching for him. I can see it in her smile. Instead of shying away from his grief, she gave him permission to feel it. They started a ritual. Each night before bed, Omar would choose a memory of his mother, and he would tell it to Alara. A trip to the beach. The way she smelled like jasmine. The silly songs she made up. Alara would listen, her presence a safe container for his sorrow and his love. And as Omar began to heal, the ice around Tarek's heart began to thaw. He would come home from his long, grueling days at the office to find the silence of his home replaced by the soft murmur of Alara reading a story, or the sound of Omar's rare, precious laughter. He started coming home earlier. He would stand in the doorway, unseen, and watch them. He saw the way Alara looked at his son, with an unadulterated tenderness that was both maternal and something uniquely her own. He saw the way Omar would instinctively reach for her hand. He felt a pang of something he couldn't name, gratitude, relief, and a sharp, surprising sting of jealousy. This quiet woman was succeeding where he had so profoundly failed. But not everyone in the Al Jamil Empire viewed Alara as a miracle worker. Tarek's older sister, Amara, was the self-appointed guardian of the family's legacy and reputation. She was elegant, sharp-tongued, and deeply suspicious. She saw Alara not as a savior, but as a cunning opportunist. "A waitress, Tarek?" she'd said, her voice dripping with disdain during a tense phone call. "You brought a common waitress into your home, to care for your son? Have you lost your mind? What do you know about her? She's a gold digger, it's as plain as day," she calmed him down, "Amara. Something no one else could do," Tarek had replied, his voice tight. "It was a fluke. A trick. You are being naive. You are vulnerable, and she is exploiting that. Mark my words, she will bring shame upon this family." Amara decided to orchestrate a situation to expose Alara for the fraud she believed her to be. The annual Al Jamil Foundation Gala was approaching. It was the premier society event of the year, a night where the family had to present a united, powerful front. "Omar must be there," Amara announced to Tarek. "It has been a year. People are talking. We must show that he is well, that the family is strong. He's not ready," Tarek argued. "The crowds, the noise, it will be too much for him." "Nonsense," Amara countered, her eyes glinting. "He has his new companion, doesn't he? If she is as capable as you claim, this will be the perfect opportunity for her to prove it. Let the world see her work her magic." It was a trap, and Tarek knew it. The gala would be a sensory nightmare for Omar. A public meltdown was almost guaranteed. It would not only be a personal humiliation but would also undermine his leadership in the eyes of the board members and investors who would be present. He was putting Alara in an impossible position. But refusing would be seen as a sign of weakness, an admission that his sister was right. With a heavy heart he agreed. The night of the gala arrived, charged with tension. Alara had helped Omar get into a small, tailored suit. He looked like a little prince, but his eyes were wide with anxiety. "So many people?" he whispered to Alara, clutching her hand as they prepared to leave. "Yes, a lot of people," she said calmly, kneeling in front of him. "But you and I will have a secret. It will be our bubble. No matter how many people are there, or how loud it gets, you and I will be safe inside our bubble. I won't leave your side for a second. Pinky promise?" She held out her little finger. He solemnly wrapped his own around it. "Pinky promise." Tarek watched the exchange, a knot of dread in his stomach. He was throwing them to the wolves. As they entered the grand ballroom, a wave of noise and light hit them. Hundreds of guests in tuxedos and gowns turned to stare. Cameras flashed. The air buzzed with whispers. Omar flinched, his grip on Alara's hand tightening. Amara glided over, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "He looks wonderful," she said, her eyes fixed on Omar, waiting for the cracks to appear. The first hour was an exercise in supreme tension. Omar clung to Alara, his face buried in her dress. She didn't try to pull him away or force him to interact. She simply stood with him, one hand stroking his back, murmuring softly to him, reinforcing their invisible bubble. She pointed out small, interesting things he could focus on: the pattern on a woman's dress, the way the light reflected off a crystal glass, the different colors of the flowers. She created a micro-world for him amidst the macro chaos. When it was time for Tarek's speech, the moment of truth arrived. He had to go on stage, leaving them alone in the crowd. He gave Alara a look of profound apology. She just nodded, her eyes calm and reassuring. As Tarek spoke, his voice echoing through the ballroom, Alara led Omar to a quiet corner near a large potted fern, creating a small, green sanctuary. She took out a small notepad and a pen from her simple clutch, the only accessory she had. She started drawing a simple cartoon, a continuation of a story they had been creating together. Omar, shielded from the overwhelming crowd, became engrossed. He pointed at the drawing, whispering a suggestion for the next part of the story. From the stage, Tarek could see them. He saw his son, not crying, not screaming, but engaged and calm in the middle of a social tempest. He saw Alara, an island of serenity, her entire focus on the well-being of his child. For the first time, his speech wasn't just about financial projections and corporate responsibility. He found himself speaking about legacy, about what truly matters, his eyes continually drawn to the corner where a quiet miracle was unfolding. When he finished to a round of thunderous applause, he made his way directly to them, ignoring the swarm of people trying to congratulate him. Amara was already there, her face a mask of stunned disbelief. "He's quiet," she stammered. "He is safe," Alara corrected gently. Later that evening, as the gala wound down, Tarek found Alara and Omar by the grand windows, looking out at the city lights. Omar was actually smiling, pointing out a boat on the river below. Tarek came and stood beside them, not as a boss, but as a father. "You were incredible tonight, Alara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." "Omar was the brave one," she replied, smiling at the boy. After they put a tired but peaceful Omar to bed, Tarek found Alara in the silent living room. The adrenaline of the evening had faded, leaving a quiet intimacy in its wake. "I owe you an apology," he said, his usual formality gone. "I knew what my sister was trying to do. I put you in an impossible situation. It's all right," Alara said. "We managed." "You did more than manage," he said, taking a step closer. "You showed me something I think I'd forgotten." He looked around the vast, empty room. "This place wasn't a home. It was a holding cell for my grief. I was so focused on the legacy, the business, on not failing. I was failing the one person who mattered most. You didn't just help Omar tonight. You helped me." He opened up then, the ice king melting away to reveal the grieving husband and terrified father beneath. He spoke of his wife, Layla, of their love story, of the vibrant life she had brought to his structured world, and the deafening silence she had left behind. He confessed his fear that he was losing his son, not just to grief, but to his own emotional distance. Alara listened, her heart aching with a different kind of empathy now, not for the child, but for the man. She saw the profound loneliness he carried, a burden as heavy as any financial empire. She shared a piece of her own story, of nursing her mother, of the quiet moments of joy and the crushing weight of loss. In that shared vulnerability, under the soft lights of the penthouse, something shifted. The space between them, once a chasm of class and circumstance, was now filled with a fragile, powerful connection. It was no longer about an employer and an employee, a billionaire and a waitress. It was about a man and a woman who understood the landscape of loss, and who were, for the first time, seeing in each other the possibility of a new beginning. The air crackled with unspoken feelings, and as he looked at her, truly saw her, with all her quiet strength and profound grace, Tarek realized his sister had been right about one thing. Alara was a danger to the cold, empty life he had built around himself. And it was a danger he found himself desperately wanting. Furious and humiliated, Amara refused to accept defeat. The waitress's success at the gala was not a miracle, it was a performance, and she was determined to pull back the curtain. If Tarek was too blind to see the truth, she would force it into the light. She hired a private investigator, a discreet but ruthless man who specialized in digging up the kind of dirt that could ruin reputations. "I want to know everything," she commanded. "Every job she's had, every dollar she's owed, every person she's ever known. Find the cracks. Find the lie." For weeks, the investigator delved into Alara's simple, unassuming past. There were no hidden scandals, no secret lovers, no trail of deceit. There was only a life of quiet hardship, working multiple jobs, caring for a sick parent, a clean, if modest, record. Amara was growing frustrated until the investigator finally found it, a single, exploitable vulnerability. He discovered the mountain of medical debt left from her mother's long and ultimately unsuccessful battle with cancer. And within that, he found a single, damning incident. Desperate to get her mother into a promising but expensive clinical trial a few years prior, Elara had taken out a high-interest loan from a predatory lender. When the trial failed and her mother's condition worsened, she had defaulted. The lending company had pursued her aggressively, and in a moment of panic and desperation, she had been accused by a former employer, a small cafe owner pressured by the lenders, of skimming from the register. The charges were dropped for lack of evidence, but the accusation remained on a confidential background check. It was the crack Amara had been looking for. She had the investigator package it all into a sleek, damning report: the massive debt, the predatory loan, the accusation of theft. It painted a perfect picture of a desperate, financially motivated woman with questionable ethics, a classic gold digger. Amara waited for the perfect moment. She found Tariq in his home office one evening, poring over quarterly reports. He seemed more relaxed, more present than he had in over a year. A faint smile even touched his lips as he heard Elara and Omar laughing in the next room over a board game. The sound was like nails on a chalkboard to Amara. "Tariq, we need to talk," she said, her voice grave. She placed the glossy, bound report on his desk. "I told you I was concerned about your new arrangement. I did some checking. For the family's protection." "For your protection?" Tariq looked from the report to his sister's face, a cold dread seeping into his chest. "What is this, Amara?" "It's the truth," she said, her voice laced with false sympathy. "It's who you've brought into your home. Into your son's life." He opened the folder. He saw the figures of Elara's debt, figures that were astronomical to her but a rounding error to him. He read about the predatory loan, his jaw tightening in anger at the vultures who had preyed on her desperation. And then he saw it, the report from the cafe, the accusation of theft. Amara watched his face, expecting to see disillusionment, anger, betrayal. "She's a thief, Tariq. She was accused of stealing. She has debts you can't even imagine. It's all here. She targeted you. She saw a grieving, wealthy man and she played her part perfectly." Tariq closed the folder, his expression unreadable. The old Tariq, the Ice King, would have seen this as a breach, a risk to be neutralized. He would have called security. But he was not the same man he was a few months ago. He had watched Elara day in and day out. He had seen her quiet integrity, her selfless devotion to his son, her lack of interest in the wealth that surrounded her. He had opened his heart to her, and she had held it with gentle care. He now faced a choice. He could trust the evidence presented by a world he understood, a world of transactions, leverage, and suspicion, represented by his sister. Or he could trust his heart, his gut, and the transformation he had witnessed in his own home. He stood up, the report still in his hand. "Thank you, Amara," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You may leave now, Tariq, are you listening to me?" she sputtered. "She is a con artist." "I said you may leave," he repeated, his voice dropping to a low command that had ended careers. Amara, stunned by his dismissal, backed away and left, leaving the toxic report on his desk like a venomous snake. Tariq stood there for a long moment, the sound of Omar's laughter a stark contrast to the ugliness in the folder. He walked out of the office and found Elara on the floor, helping Omar build a tower of blocks. She looked up at him and smiled, a pure, unguarded smile that lit up her face. And in that moment, his choice was made. Later that night, after Omar was asleep, he found her reading in the living room. He held the report in his hand. Her heart sank when she saw the folder, recognizing the formal gloss of a business document. "Elara," he began, his voice soft. He didn't sit opposite her. He sat beside her on the sofa. My sister has been investigating your past. Alara's face paled. She felt a familiar shame and fear wash over her. She found this. He didn't hand her the report. He simply told her what was in it: the debt, the loan, and the accusation. He watched her face closely, not for guilt, but for the truth. Tears welled in Alara's eyes, not of guilt, but of old pain and humiliation. The loan, my mother, there was a trial, a last chance. I would have done anything, she whispered, her voice breaking. And the cafe, the owner was a good man, but the loan company threatened him. They told him to say I stole from him to pressure me. He told me later, after they dropped it. He was so ashamed. She looked down at her hands, unable to meet his gaze. I understand if you want me to leave. I should have told you. Tarek didn't say anything. Instead, he reached out and took the report from his own lap. He walked over to the fireplace, which was purely decorative and had never been used. He pressed a button, and a clean, gas-fueled flame flickered to life. Then, he dropped the entire report into the fire. They watched together as the glossy pages curled, blackened, and turned to ash. The lies, the suspicions, the painful history, all of it consumed by the flames. He turned back to her, his eyes full of a deep, unwavering certainty. Your past is not who you are, Alara. Your past is what you survived. I don't care what's written in a file. I care about what I see every day. I see your kindness. I see your strength. I see the woman who saved my son. He came back to the sofa and gently took her hands. I'm not letting you go. My sister, however, will be taking a long, extended vacation from family affairs. He looked at her, his heart in his eyes. I was wrong to ever see this as a job. It was never a job. The fire crackled, consuming the last of Amara's poison. In the warm, flickering light, the last wall between them crumbled, not into ash, but into the foundation of something new, something strong, something built not on contracts or evidence, but on unwavering trust. The days that followed were a quiet revolution. With the specter of Amara's suspicion banished, and the ugliness of the past burned away, the penthouse finally, truly became a home. The sterile silence was permanently replaced by the sounds of life, Omar's laughter echoing down the halls, the soft melodies Alara hummed in the kitchen, the low, warm murmur of late-night conversations. Tarek found himself delegating more at work, leaving the office at respectable hours, drawn home by a force far more powerful than any market trend. He was rediscovering the man he was before grief had encased him in ice, a man who could laugh, who could play, who could love. He would join Alara and Omar on the floor, his expensive suit jacket discarded, as they built elaborate Lego castles. He would listen, captivated, as Alara read bedtime stories, her voice weaving magic that soothed not only his son but his own weary soul. He saw the world anew through her eyes, finding joy in the simple shape of a cloud, the taste of a home-baked cookie, the warmth of a shared blanket. She taught him that value wasn't in acquisition, but in connection. She taught his son that it was safe to love and remember, and she taught Tarek that it was safe to love again. One sunny Saturday afternoon, they took Omar to the park. It was a simple outing, something so normal for other families, but for them, it was a momentous occasion. There were no bodyguards, no stuffy itinerary. It was just the three of them. Tarek pushed Omar on the swings, his deep laughter joining his son's delighted squeals. Alara watched them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Later, as Omar chased pigeons on the grass, Tarek came and sat beside her on the bench. "Look at him," Tarek said, his voice filled with wonder. "He's just a happy kid, he always was," Alara replied softly. "He just needed to find his way back." Tarek turned to her, his expression serious, his dark eyes searching hers. "We all did. Alara, when you first came into my life, I was trying to solve a problem. I offered you a job to fix my son. I thought I could purchase a solution. But you gave us something that can't be bought. You gave us your heart. You healed us. You pieced our family back together." He took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her knuckles. But it's not complete. There's still a missing piece. Alara's breath caught in her throat. What I'm trying to say, he continued, his voice thick with emotion, is that this isn't about Omar anymore. This is about me. I can't imagine a single day without you in it. I don't want to come home to a companion for my son. I want to come home to my partner. To the woman I love. Tears streamed down Alara's cheeks, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. This powerful, brilliant man, who had the world at his feet, was offering her his heart with such raw, humble sincerity. Tariq, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out, not a diamond ring in a velvet box, but a small, intricately folded piece of paper. It was a bird, just like the one she had made from a napkin that first night in the restaurant. I don't want to offer you a contract, he said, his voice trembling slightly. I want to offer you a life. A family. Our family. Alara, will you marry me? Will you be a mother to Omar, not because a job description says so, but because you love him? Will you be my wife because you love me? She didn't need to say yes. Her answer was in the way she threw her arms around his neck, her tears soaking his shirt. It was in the way she kissed him, a kiss filled with all the hardship of her past and all the bright promise of their future. Just then, Omar came running back to them, a feather clutched in his hand. He saw them clinging to each other, saw the tears on Alara's face, and his expression grew worried. Are you sad? He asked her, his little brow furrowed. Alara pulled back, wiping her tears, her face radiant with happiness. She knelt before him, taking his small face in her hands. No, my love, she said, her voice clear and strong. These are the happiest tears in the world. She looked from Omar's precious face to Tariq's loving one. I'm home. And so, the story comes full circle. We are left with a final question. What is true wealth? Is it a penthouse with a panoramic view, or is it a home filled with laughter? Is it the power to command markets, or the strength to heal a broken heart? The world may have seen a billionaire and a waitress. But they found in each other what truly mattered, a love that saw beyond status, a connection that healed all wounds, and a family built not on a foundation of money, but on the unshakable ground of mutual respect, trust, and love. They proved that the greatest value isn't something you can own, but something you build. It's not what you have, but who you have to share it with. What do you think? Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's hidden value shone through? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the best things in life are never just things.